People, deluded, I'm back again. I'm live. We're all live. I hope you're all well and safe. Please smash the like buttons. I have a very special guest. James, how are you doing? I know you need no introduction, but how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really pleased to be here. It's been a crazy few weeks, just of constant, never-ending Premier League. But it's nice to sort of take a moment to reflect on where we've come from of late.
That's a great thing. And that set me up for my first question, man. Early blocks. You just mentioned it. What have you made of the season so far? It has been a bit of a long season. It feels like we're in May already because there's been a lot of storylines and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, the season as a whole has been so draining. I mean, I guess we'll talk about Arsenal in particular as well. And I mean, that's been pretty draining. But yeah, just it feels like we're even more on a treadmill than, I mean, guys, whether you work in the media, whether sort of bit of media you work in, if you're doing content, you're writing, making videos, it just feels like you never really have a moment to stop and just take a couple of days to think, because it's the next game. It's the next game. I mean, I remember, obviously, at CBS, we're kind of really focused on the European competitions. So we got to the end of the group stage and it was like, hallelujah, we've got some free time. And then you check the scheduling. Oh, there's games on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Great.
No respite at all.
And then it's Christmas. So yeah, it's been a relentless slog, but equally, at least we don't have too much time where we're just sat twiddling our thumbs.
That's it. I can't complain. And you can't complain. Keeping us busy, it's a blessing. And, especially with what's happening globally, we can't really be too disappointed. What have you made of Arsenal in particular this season? I know we sit 15th and there's a bunch of negative stats and we could go through, but I mean, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, it's a disaster. I'm still struggling to put my finger on really what the problem is. I think probably because there's loads of problems, and some of them are to do with the manager, some of them are to do with the players, some of them are years of failings coming home to roost. But it does feel like a perfect storm of all those things. That you have a rookie head coach who is clearly talented and could well be a great coach for Arsenal or a great coach for another team, but has been kind of thrust into a really difficult situation off the pitch. Really difficult situation on the pitch with a squad that just kind of is not balanced in anywhere near the right way. We talk about, creativity is obviously the key theme, and they're not creating chances. They're not creating opportunities for Aubameyang. And I think, part of that comes down to the transfer business they've done. Part of that is years in the making that, people sort of talk about Mesut Ozil as the sole solution to creativity. Well, that's not ideal either, is it? To have the one player who you kind of are going to rely on to create all your chances, whether he's there or not. The squad is kind of a mixture of veterans and unproven players, whether they're young or they just don't have Premier League experience. And a lot of those veterans have proven to be not kind of Arsenal standard players or what we would expect Arsenal standard players to be. And then every other team in the league has got quite good. So it is a really tough time. I think this is a blip. Personally, I think the last month has been that perfect storm, and Arsenal will get through it, probably with the coach they have. I wouldn't rule anything out, but right now, every indication is they're standing by Arteta. And, there's a brighter future in sight. And, we all knew that until 2021, this would be hard. There's a horrible, the wage bill is a horrible mess. And that stuff starts to ease. It's not perfect, but it starts to ease next summer. It's a long process, and it kind of feels like years of failures have come home in this 1 month, and it may well get better, but there's so many issues on and off the pitch at this club.
I mean, just hearing you speak, you took the words out of my mouth, and it was quite upsetting, and it was just damning how real that speech from you was. And I mean, everyone could see it, a blind man could see it. Do you feel there's been any positives? I ask everybody this: has there been any positives this season?
Yeah, I think actually there's this strange thing where you have a kind of a core that you could build around. It's just that everything around that core is actually really quite bad. It's this strange thing. I mean, I think some of Arsenal's players would not kind of cut the mustard at a top-tier championship club. Maybe that's just because of the English game, because I think some of them are talented. But, I look at this squad right now and I say, at least for the next few years, Aubameyang is probably a good enough striker. You have a world-class central midfielder in Thomas Partey, and we've only seen flashes of him, but enough to convince me that everything that was the case at Atletico Madrid is going to be the case at Arsenal. And by the way, I watched my first post-Partey Atleti match at the weekend when they played Real Madrid, and they need to have 3 midfielders to do what he used to do for them. And then Gabriel, Tierney, Leno, you've got a good core there that needs strength. It's just that thing of, that's that, and there are a lot of those players that come in recently, and they're players that you want to build around. But you've got whoever at right-sided centre back. It's not good enough. Is not good enough to be a top half Premier League central defender. Hector Bellerin, I really like as a person. I'm not seeing it as a player at the moment. I'd like him to prove me wrong, but he's not. The midfield, bar Partey, is atrociously put together. It's the same player, just doing slightly different things. Granit Xhaka, Dani Ceballos, Mohamed El Neni are all basically the same player. Someone that moves the ball sideways. And then on the wings, Pepe, I just try not to. I just don't know.
I wish I had any comments on Pepe. I don't know what to say either.
He's not reliable, and I don't think a winger should be reliable, but it's that thing of you want him to have 3 out of 5 excellent games.
You want him to do what Saka did yesterday.
Yeah. That's the other one. The brightest of all the bright spots is Bukayo Saka. I actually think there's much too much pressure on him. I would worry about what it means for, his. I mean, if nothing, teams are kicking him out of the game because it's what you would if Arsenal played that brand of football, if they came up against an equivalent of Bukayo Saka, you would be delighted if your team kicked him out of the game
because you have half a chance.
Yeah, he does everything for this team. He's the left wing back when they need to defend with a 5. He's the number 10 when they've got the ball. He's the left winger so that Aubameyang can get central. He adds a body to central midfield because you can't rely on 2 of Ceballos and Xhaka and El Neni.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It is. And I look at him and he is one of the, Arsenal young players better than I. Everyone's known for years that he was going to be a great talent. I don't think anyone quite appreciated how great a leader. His mentality is phenomenal. He would be if you had a team of 10 Bukayo Sakas,
we'd have half a chance. We'd have half a chance. What do you make of that? Sorry to cut you off, but what do you make of that? Because I find myself sitting here, and you've kind of indirectly touched on it. Whether we win, lose, or draw. I know Gabriel got sent off yesterday, but he stands up to be counted. Young 19-year-old Bukayo Saka. We've got Kieran Tierney, and we've got the Partey's and historically Aubameyang and Leno. Focusing on the 3 names. 2 years ago, 18 months ago, they were nowhere near the first team picture. Do you feel that's what's wrong in that? It's great that we're speaking of someone like Tierney becoming the captain or Saka, but it's like when we look around, what singular pillar reflects what Arsenal should be about, or what our core values, or what we're trying to do as a club? Yes, you've hit the nail on the head there. So there are players that reflect Arsenal, but they don't reflect the Arsenal you want. So who is the most? The most reflective player of this current Arsenal is Granit Xhaka, who is a player who, on his day, can be a player of real talent who can win a game against the top team. And I tweeted that when he got sent off, or in the aftermath of that, and I had people say, "When has Xhaka been good?" 2017 FA Cup final, 2020 FA Cup final. There have been numerous games where Xhaka's really he's had good spells,
but he goes missing. Not only that, he looks for the easy way out. And I mean, my criticism of that stupid red card against Burnley was that's the easy way out. It is the get me out of this situation. I can't deal with it. He responds in an aggressive manner that is in no way aimed in the right direction. If you want to get angry on the pitch. Start winning tackles. Start imposing yourself on defenders. And we've seen quite a few instances of this. I thought Dani Ceballos did something quite similar when he went down for a penalty that just didn't exist yesterday. I think there are a lot of players in that Arsenal squad that look for the easy way out that get scared. Was it Theo Walcott said they got scared yesterday?
Yeah, Theo Walcott said that they knew Arsenal would be nervous.
Looks like.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't blame him for saying that. We look nervous. You said it perfectly in that we take the easy way out. Personally, I think, you know better than me, being in the world of media, I think at Arsenal, there's always a scapegoat. As poor as Xhaka has been, at times, he's blamed for all problems. The same with Bellerin and things like that. I personally feel, not to be sinister, but I feel team players in this team hide behind other teammates that get more scrutiny. They hide behind the manager and actually people above Arteta, because as you know yourself, with Arsenal, there's not really one singular pillar you can attribute all of the blame to, or to say why this club isn't where we're at. So you hit the nail on the head. And I also feel too many players at this football club are hot and cold. It's like, if I had to bet my life on it, there's only a couple of players, like you said at the start, that are really going to put in performances. And what happens when Gabriel has an off day? I think, excluding the red card, he was involved in the build-up for our goal, but he's shown that he's still as good as he's been. He's 22 years of age. You know, Saka has at times, I don't think he's played well in the beginning, but he stood up to be counted. And I look around and I see, I don't want to name the players, but it's like, shouldn't you feel a bit like a disgrace if you're seeing a 19-year-old play how you should be, or someone that hasn't been at the club for more than 2 years doing what you should do?
See, and I 100% agree. And if I put on my, if I'm emotionally invested in this, I look at what Saka does. He demands the ball. Actually, what I ask most what I would be asking most as a supporter is, if things are going bad, just ask for the ball. Don't shy away from the pass. And the number of times that you could see midfielders not making a run, the forwards not dropping deep to come and collect the ball. And sometimes you don't always want them dropping deep, because but players were looking to try and not get the ball passed to them. And I think we do have to be really clear that this isn't just this specific 11 players, and this goes back a really long time. This is players that are not at the club anymore, and clearly it's a culture thing. And people get really annoyed about talking about culture when results are bad, because they go, oh, has the culture improved? Well, people are trying to improve the culture. Mikel Arteta does not, he may fail, but he has identified that the problem is not these technical skills of the players. It's not the makeup of the squad. It's not tactics. It's culture. It's attitude. And he might not even be the one that gets the benefit out of this, because he's gone there and, talks about shaking the tree. And we'll talk maybe later about, some of the leaks out of the squad. But when you talk about culture, when you say that these players don't want it enough, and I know that's been the message at times in Arteta's reign, some people are going to get really angry, because you're not kind of trying to coach them into, you can't do this, but I'll coach you. You're saying you need to change your attitude. You need to change the way you approach your day-to-day work. That's a real high-risk strategy, but it's what Arsenal need. I've covered this club for long enough to know that it's safe. When results go bad, people hide. We see this on the media from, there was a great example after, I can't remember what defeat it was. It was the North London derby when they lost that, and Joe Willock was the
I thought that was a disgrace.
Yeah, because, and every senior player is not immune to this. I mean, I remember the week that, it was the week that Emery left, Youngboy took over after his first game, a 2-2 draw against Norwich. It was really important, we felt, as the media covering that game, that someone senior from Arsenal came out and spoke out. And Arsenal had to beg their own players, any of them, to stop and talk, because they just didn't want to. They didn't want to take ownership of the situation. And that's only quotes in a mix zone. It's not the most important, but I think it reflects a culture that you can see on the pitch. You can see that players don't feel that they have to take ownership of the situation, that someone else will fix it. And that's someone like Bukayo Saka, a literal child.
19 years of age. Where was he 18 months, 2 years ago? Yeah. And it's phenomenal on one hand for Bukayo Saka's rise. But again, all I can say is, if I was one of these players, I'd feel disgrace. I'd feel an element of disgrace, because when things are going wrong, Bukayo Saka should be able to look to his left and right and see what Arsenal's about. He has to do it himself. You know, again, like you said, you need bravery. As much as I'm not the biggest fan of David Luiz, but when I see him, for all his faults, he's a bit brave. He'll try things in possession. Saka could have easily, like you said about bravery, he could have just went down or passed it and nothing would have happened. He tried to beat a couple of players. Unfortunately for us, it eventually ended in the back of the net. I don't see that. I feel players are cutting too many luxuries. Like, we've got certain players that will probably say, I'm not scoring goals because there's a lack of creativity. Others will say, I haven't got a balance. You know, certain wingers might say, because I haven't had a consistent fullback, there's been no partnerships. I don't see any people trying to be masters of their own destiny. And I've always said, winners take accountability, losers blame people. I think you can question Mikel Arteta's tactics, but fundamentally for me, it's these players, because 9 times out of 10, it's been cheap mistakes. Like against Southampton, we're fortunate to draw, but 9 times out of 10, our recent results, we have to applaud the opposition, but it's been cheap mistakes. And for me, I just look at our games at home. I guess I get that the fans aren't there anymore, but you're letting people come into your house essentially and just take 3 points. You're not putting up a fight. If you left your door open and someone tried to take your TV, you would say, what are you doing? And it just seems like we're happy with that. Like you said, it just feels like, you kind of alluded it to me, but for me, it feels that there's always tomorrow. And that's a good thing to have, but it's like, we're not going to try and seize the day. What if tomorrow never comes? You need to play like you're never going to get this opportunity again. And that's the problem I have with Arsenal. Do you feel Arteta's a bit hard done by? Because I do think he should face question marks about his tactics and things, but I don't think he's alone. And I think he has inherited a mess. I just think what I do blame at him is there's not a system. There's not an evidence system. And he's been here a year or so now.
Yeah, I really agree on the system. I thought that was really obvious last night, because Southampton have a way of playing and they have a system and a formation and a philosophy. And what that then means is when they come to play Arsenal, you've got all these underlying principles. And you can then adapt quite easily and quite quickly to how you're going to beat this opposition. So they were, I mean, I don't watch every single Southampton game, but I've never thought of them as a long ball team. But they were a long ball team against Arsenal because they saw the press coming, ping it long to Che Adams. They thought Arsenal. I don't know how Hasenhüttl planned this out, but it seemed to me that they thought Arsenal will expect us to attack our right flank. So the battle would be between Maitland-Niles and Bertrand and Armstrong on that left. And they thought, well, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of zig where everyone else is zagging. We're going to attack Arsenal's left. We're going to get at Tierney. We're going to get the space in behind Gabriel. We'll use Walcott. And there was, just those little things that aren't the same as the Southampton I saw against Man United. And it meant that it was really hard for Arsenal to react, because here Arsenal are with no principles, really, no underlying tactics. The basics that they try to do, they can't really do those basics anymore. Like against Burnley, you saw that they were terrified of playing out from the back.
It doesn't make sense.
That 3-4 months ago, when I saw a team press Arsenal, I was thinking to that team, oh, I wouldn't do that, lads.
Yeah, Tierney, we're going to get out of that.
Yeah, Tierney and Bellerin and that lot, they're getting out of there, and then Aubameyang's going to score. And now it's like they're terrified. So that's the thing, is you do see that Arteta's trying to put those principles in there, but I think he ditched the back three too soon, because it was a bit boring, it was a bit safe, and it was 0-0 draws. Arsenal would kill for a few 0-0 draws.
For that.
And I think the sense is that he has this end vision in mind, 4-3-3, quite similar to Pep's system at City. I don't think he rips everything off Pep, but that's what he wants Arsenal to play.
Elements of it.
And as he said last month or earlier this month, he only has half the players to do that. So what he should be doing is kind of just taking it slow. If you don't have those players, you can use some of the underlying principles. We pass out from the back. We don't go long. We look to build down the flanks. We don't need a number 10. We can keep them, but without putting too much pressure on the back two. This Arsenal team wasn't ready to move to 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 or whatever. And I think the worry then is, if you're Arteta, it's hard to go back. It's hard to say, we're on this journey to this particular type of football. We took a step forward and it hasn't worked. It can be really damaging to then go, well, we've got to go back. But I think they have to. I think they have to get back to a 3-4-3 that works, that whether it's Saka and Maitland-Niles and Tierney as the left-sided centre-back. And we saw little flashes of that against Southampton. But yeah, he's struggling to really put in those solid foundations. And when he doesn't have them, it becomes hard to do everything else. But then
Facts.
that all comes down to him not having the players to play the way he wants. Arsenal want, no one at Arsenal kind of wants to keep chopping and changing between managers and new systems and new philosophies. And I mean, that maybe Arteta will have to go. Maybe it will become too much of a risk. I don't really think they're going to get relegated, and that's really all that would cost Arteta his job.
Let's hope we can get to 40 points. And you made a great point there about Arteta and his job. And I must admit, I think in life, pressure is a privilege. I feel Arteta's been for all I feel Arteta can be accounted for. The flip side is I think he's been done a bit dirty in the sense of, I think he's a bit of a fool guy. He's inherited I can't lie, he knew the job he was taking and he knew coaching was a part of it. But at the same time, I don't think he's been helped. I do think people above him have done a lot of speaking off the field and they haven't helped him off it. And I would ask the simple question to those above him: do they feel they've equipped a novice manager with everything to be a success? I would say no. Who do you really attribute the way we find ourselves? Because I look at the players. Some of you have played under several managers and some of you are still playing the same way. I have to attribute some of it to Arteta, but then I look at the people above. I know with COVID and all the financial issues, doing business we needed to do was going to be difficult. But I think a blind man could see you needed to sign a midfielder or two. If you couldn't get the Aura or the Partey's, the headline names, can you get other profiles, a lesser profile that can do the same thing? And what I saw as a fan over the summer, it just looked of we trying to get Aura and Partey. It looked like we played a game of chicken over not paying Partey's release clause, and then they saw, okay, Atletico are not flexing their muscles. Let's go and do that. I didn't really see anything. So I look at the board in two ways. Did you just get complacent off the back of an FA Cup win and think this guy was the Messiah and not think there was going to be a blip? Or which again, you have to say you're a bit deluded? Or did you try to do business and then realize it didn't and you couldn't? So are you saying to a degree, this is a free hit of a season for Arteta? Just try and implement what you can, try and see which players you can use. Yeah,
I think there was a belief that Arteta could get this team in the Champions League, which probably, and let's be honest, we all bought into that. Media, supporters, we all thought, actually, this is a top four team. Probably not, though. It's probably 6th to 8th. Honestly, we could have got lucky and got in the top four, but then that meant kind of the problem Arsenal have had is there's an obsession with Champions League money, and they need it. They needed to pay the wage bill, but that means making and so many people have done this, taking short-term punts. Willian, the logic was, and I agreed with this logic. We go for Willian. He's a seasoned performer. He was great for Chelsea last season. And we have to give him a 3-year contract because otherwise he'll sign somewhere else or he'll sign with Chelsea for 2. And he could get us into the Champions League. You keep doing them. You keep going, new contract for Aubameyang. He might get us in the Champions League. You go, let's sign Socrates. He might get us in the Champions League. He might be the one to push us over the top. Stefan Lichtsteiner might be the depth option that we need, the one to put pressure on Hector Bellerin, and Hector Bellerin becomes better, and that gets us in.
Finally get a reaction from him.
Exactly. And everything is this, let's get in the Champions League. Let's get in the Champions League. Not, if we have to take this right back to core, if we have to cut this squad down to the ground, let's do it and build from there. And that's why, they couldn't sell Socrates because he was on too much money. They couldn't sell, you can go back to Kolasinac, let's buy a player
100 grand a week
that will fit the system that Arsene Wenger ended this season playing. Let's buy a player that can do that job, and that might help us get in the Champions League. It didn't. And that comes down to. So there are things I don't agree with criticising the owners for. They have been willing to spend money, and look, they paid a large part of the Partey release clause fee that came thanks to the ownership. The money was not there in the club to pay a 50 million euro release clause in one go. I mean, of course, there is the money there, but you know what I mean. It's much more difficult to access those funds without ownership help. So they have been supportive in terms of money. I think I can't really explain exactly how this worked, but it's similar with Pepe. in terms of making, this was before KSE paid the Emirates Stadium loan. They made certain guarantees on that loan that allowed Arsenal to make the commitment on Pepe. But what they haven't done is they haven't kind of forced the people they employ to run Arsenal to have a really serious conversation about what is the best way to build this team, not into a top 4 contender, but into a Premier League winner. And so does that necessitate, it's the equivalent of, and you'd think the Cronkies would know this quite well, being on the other sports they're in, that sometimes you kind of have to, you've got a top 4, a playoff team in the NBA or the NFL. But if you want to build that into a championship contender, you kind of have to sometimes go a little lower to go much higher.
To step backwards is to go a step up.
And that means not handing out the big contracts to 30-year-olds you can't sell on. It means buying the 23-year-old from Hull, a la Liverpool, and taking time and building the squad slowly but methodically, and not constantly having to buy another centre-back because you panicked every window. I mean,
we love a centre being linked with a centre half, don't we?
And now they're looking at another one.
8 already on the books, and we,
and three will go this far, but they will try and, from what I've been told, and I know that others have reported this before me as well, there's a desire to look at a right-sided centre-back. But you've in the last 3 windows, they've signed Saliba, and then Arteta came in the squad and quite rightly pointed out, and I believe it took quite a few in the hierarchy by surprise. He said, do you know you've not got a left-footed centre-back? And you have 6 or 7, was it, at the time?
Yeah.
And you have none that kick the ball with their left foot. So they, and Arteta said, I need one. So they had to go and get Mari. But then the truth was that Mari's not your starting left-footed centre-back. So you have to go and get Gabriel. And then there's Saliba, and that's a mess. And there's a fair logic to doing Saliba, and actually you don't need to panic about him not being ready in the first 6 months at Arsenal.
Oh, I 100% agree. 100% agree.
I'm not sure that they're recruiting. They're not recruiting to a long-term plan, and that's started to change. Partey and Gabriel, there's a view to how they fit into not just the team this season, but the team in years 3 and 4. But that, this takes years to turn around, and it's short-term gambles. That does come down to ownership. But it also, it's just squad's just it's been constructed by about 5 different people. You've had the Wenger signings, the Mislintat, the Sanye. There's a couple that Emery, kind of really pushed for. And there's the ones Emery didn't want at all.
Yeah. Wow.
And then, Arteta and Eddie are now dictating this squad, which is kind of the argument as well for trusting someone, because you need someone to just have a long-term plan. And I don't think that should really be the manager, the head coach, but it is right now. And this is the accumulation of everyone not doing what they should be doing. It's the accumulation of the players just finding it too easy, of the hierarchy not being stable, not making the right decisions for the long term, just making them for the short term. Everyone is to blame, and that's why, going back to the idea that Arteta is kind of being made as a sort of what's the right word? He's a scapegoat for and
he's the fall guy ultimately, because as you know yourself, it ultimately lands with the manager. I think even with Emre needed to go. There was a lot of things I didn't see, but I didn't think he was to blame for everything. But ultimately, fans, that's all fans see. We don't see Kroenke, we don't see people above him. I know we saw Edu kind of losing his mind yesterday in the stands, but we don't typically see these guys. And you made a great point in that regards. Go on.
I was just going to say, the other people aren't blameless in this, and I don't know, we have to differentiate here, but to an extent, the culture around Arsenal is one that this includes the fans, and I appreciate I'm now going to get loads of abuse for saying this, but it's one that would like to think it's patient and will tolerate difficulties.
It's not.
But then every transfer window comes round and there's a demand to spend hundreds of millions.
cry for young players, and then these young players come in. It's like you mentioned the Saliba thing. I don't mind that Saliba isn't playing. My problem with Saliba is, okay, he might not be playing for today, but we've spent 27 million on a man. You know, he's 18, 19 years of age. He's spoken of a Rolls Royce. I want to know the plan. If we know he's not ready, where is his loan going to be? And it just seems like we're freestyling, and he's missed out on a lot of football in that regards. And you made a great point of buying players into a system. I don't get that sense at Arsenal. Like, for me, I have a lot of blame with the Kroenkes in the sense of the mentality should come from above. I don't really feel there's pressure on individuals to succeed, or it would filter down, even to the point with Arteta. Maybe if there was a bit of pressure, and not saying that he's going to lose his job, but a healthy sense of pressure, he wouldn't persist with certain players that he's now had to not use, ironically, yesterday because of suspension. But at the same time, I think the problem comes with not only with the Kroenkes and their lack of direction. I feel when there has been money, we haven't worked with the little we've had and maximized it within our context. You look at Pepe, I like Pepe, but 72 million, we don't know what we've got. You mentioned Xhaka. What the hell is he as a midfielder? You know, there's been Mustafi. There's a bunch of mismanagement around this club, and it just seems like you've got an owner who's out of sight, out of mind, and he employs people, and then you've just got people left to their own devices, and it's just too many chefs in the kitchen. Ultimately, that is going to spoil your meal.
Yes, it's so strange because then I think a lot of these individuals are really talented.
That's the thing.
Like the recruitment team that was ripped apart. Like Francis Kajigai is one of the best scouts in the world, one of the best talent spots in the world. But then he was the head of recruitment, and you know, obviously post Mislintat, he was the head of recruitment, even though he was the senior scout at a club that consistently signed the wrong players. So I mean, it is that thing of it's really hard to sort of paint with broad brushstrokes. You know, this one person is useless, and even I mean, the Kroenkes are absolutely not blameless, but then you also kind of go to this view of like, and whenever I sort of speak to people within Arsenal and criticise the Kroenkes, the response is always, it's quite understandable. We go, well, what would you like from it? Would you like a club where the owner is constantly looming large over the situation, like, you know, West Brom this week? From what I've heard, a lot of people within West Brom didn't want to sack Bilic, and the owner was like, no, I don't really fancy him, we're sacking him. I might be wrong there, but I've heard a couple of people who know better than me have told me that. Or would you know, you've got the same with Abramovich, and it's chaos and turbulence, and maybe it gets you trophies, but it's turbulent and it can end in some really bad ways. Or in theory, would you want an owner like Stan Kroenke, who looks to hire the best people for a job and lets them get on with it? Now, their view of that, you know, that's their view. It clearly hasn't worked like that. I think it's allowed a culture to develop where no one really fears the sack, at least until Tim Lewis came.
That's my problem.
But I mean, I think you have to kind of, you do have to think of it as, you have to see the Kroenkes' logic, and I see that logic. I don't think it's worked. I do think it can work. They've just put their trust in the wrong people.
And I just don't think they're footballing men. Honestly, I think that's where our problem is. I never get the desire. It's like Roman Abramovich. I hear what you're saying about Abramovich, and it's a good point. But I would rather Abramovich in the sense of, I know he gets a bad rep. It's just, for me, forget the money. It's just, I can genuinely see a reality where if like for instance, Chelsea have lost their last 2 games. I can see Roman Abramovich just randomly popping in at training. I'm not saying he needs to flex his muscles, but just so there's an element of pressure. I mean, in your job, you know, you respond well to pressure. If you was just left to your own devices, would you be the James you are? Like, would you be trying to get the best news? Would you be consistently developing yourself? No, you're a competitive person and you've got a competitive environment, so you're going to rise to that. I think that's actually where Arsenal is lacking. I think you've got an owner where, again, I don't think you can blame him for everything, but underliningly, I think the mentality or lack of mentality or culture at this club comes down to him. I think even you look at someone like Edu, he's not really helped himself, because as a fan, I'm looking at it as, yeah, he's held other positions off the field, but he's come into this new role. And he's again, Tim Lewis, like you said, we've clipped a lot of people in terms of streamlining, but it just seems to me that he shouldered a lot of responsibility. And one thing I know, when you lack experience, there are things in a job you don't know. Now, clearly there's other staff members around the Arsenal to help help and are involved in transfers, but it just feels like there's ultimately too much. And for me, I'm very harsh on Edu and Vinay in particular because I don't feel they've helped Arteta. You know, you look at our midfield, but when I look at it and I look at rumours, when you hear things like they're more or less having to beg for 45 million for Partey, how much can you do your job to a certain extent, and then how much can the man below you do his job? So for me, that's probably why I'm there with I blame the Kroenkes the most, because again, even looking at the last summer, what was it? I can't remember the term. Is it FFP? The laws were relaxed. I mean, if that's a real footballing owner, surely you can inject some funds in there. And I hear what you're saying, and I'm not getting at you, of course, with bringing in Partey for 45 million, but it goes back to me. If I know we haven't addressed an area since Patrick Vieira, I can't really praise the owner for that, for doing it in 2020 when you took over in 2007 or whatever, really.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think there's, you know, it might be a bit more drama, but look, having someone like Roman Abramovich who understands football and is really emotionally invested, it matters to the Kroenkes that they are good stewards of Arsenal, that they, you know, that, but I don't know how much it matters that they don't win football matches. I don't know that it's the same, you know, it's a sort of, they wake up and they're disappointed. It's really sad. That's fine, but it might not be enough. You know, when Roman Abramovich wins football matches, I mean, I remember this thing from Carlo Ancelotti, wasn't it? When his teams would win, Chelsea teams would win football matches 2-0, and Roman would be like, well, why didn't you win 6-0? And it's hard. That can make for real turbulence. But at the same stage, it probably just makes for a little bit. It's hard for there to be a slow decline. There may be sharp declines and then sharp upswings. Like, you know, and Chelsea have had so many more of them than Arsenal have had.
Yeah, that's a great example. That was a great way of putting it. I'd just getting many examples. I was sure there was a season they finished 8th and then won the league the year after. I could be wrong, but something along those lines.
Mourinho to Conte, and then Conte's second season was a disaster as well. And it's, you know, even when they are doing quite well, like they did under Sarri, it's never-ending turbulence. And that, you know, I think Arsenal fans, if they were in that situation, they might get tired of it after a while, but you win trophies. You win the Premier League. That won't change. I think the other thing we're getting frustrated with the Kroenkes is they're not really here to sell. And I don't know who you sell it to.
That's it. That's a good point. That's one thing I forgot to ask you. Can you see there's a reality where the Kroenkes ever sell? Because for me, I see this as I see Arsenal. When I remove the fact that I love this football club and it's a football club, it's a fantastic business. You know, he technically has seen his stock rise. He gets to use it as collateral. You could potentially pass it down through generations. As poor as Arsenal have been, we've still turned around and signed Lacazette, Aubameyang, Partey. They're still the London attraction. We've been woeful, but the minute fans were allowed back into the stadiums, 2,000 tickets were sold. So there's still always going to be that sort of demand. So could you ever see a reality where you sell him, where he sells? I know people speak of relegation would force them to sell, even though I don't want to go down, but could you see a reality they pack up? Like,
it's certainly, I mean, everything has a price. That's all. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I can see realities because they're not, in the end, they're not sort of that, because as we said, they're not born and bred fans that it means the world to them to own it. They really value Arsenal. I've spoken to Josh before, and he does. He cares. It might not be enough, and that, you know, it doesn't mean they're good owners just because they care and they sign a few checks. I don't think they're bad owners, but they're not great owners. They're fun. So yeah, there's a world where they sell because in the end they don't feel like they need to own it. I don't know who they sell it to. I don't really know. There's only a finite number of people that are out there, and I think a lot of them come with quite questionable, you know, ethical things that hang over them. We saw that with Newcastle with the Saudis. I'm not an expert on, you know, a lot of the people that could buy Premier League clubs. What I'd say, because it's a name that always pops up, Aliko Dangote. I write a story about him every year saying he's going to sign Arsenal in 2 years. And I only get my Aliko Dangote information from Burna Boy, but from what I've heard on his album, Dangote is no great guy either.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm not I'm not expecting it to happen. I don't think, then they're not looking to sell. Again, there's a price, and it's a big price. All those things you were saying, this could be one of the big. I mean, it still is one of the biggest clubs in the world, but this could be. They are in the. We're biased because obviously, I'm not there at the moment, but I grew up in London, live in London, or I've grown up in London. You're a Londoner. It's the best city in the world. Arsenal, the biggest club in there, still somehow, implausibly.
Yeah,
they're the biggest club in London. It's the place everyone wants to live. We've seen that with players like Alexis Sanchez, Oba. They will reject going elsewhere because they'd love to live in London and love to play in an Arsenal shirt. So it's always going to be a great club. So there will always be people that will look to buy it. I just don't know who can afford it. It's like £2 billion.
That's the thing.
There's no way the fans are clubbing together for that.
We need to put a lot of coins together. Let me ask you about Arteta. Now, again, I feel like I said earlier, you can get at if people want Arteta to leave, I can't say you're wrong to say that, because it's a results game. Personally, I back him. Admittedly, I don't really know what I'm backing beyond the sense of I like this guy for some reason, because there's plenty of reasons for him to go. But when I hear him speak, you mentioned earlier, he's mentioned via Spanish papers that he needs 5 to 6 players. He's spoken about the tree. He's spoken about we all need to pull together. I feel he's crippled in that regards, because I don't feel one singular pillar can move this club forward. It's the same way we look at Gabriel to change our fortunes in an attacking sense, or this mystery creative midfielder to come in and create 100 chances. One person cannot change this multi-billion company by themselves. Do you feel it's a never-ending battle? Because you're hearing again and better yet, I guess I ask you, do you feel players are turning against him, or there's a degree of favoritism, or players are feeling favoritism? Because I personally feel the difference with Pepe and Xhaka's red cards is that he's potentially learned his lesson from Pepe and thought, I don't want to dig him out. But some will say 2 different sorts of energies for both of them. Willian, or unauthorized trip to Dubai, still playing games, playing poorly. In fact, forget what he's doing off the field, just playing poorly. It does seem like, I don't want to be the guy to say the names, but Xhaka, Bellerin and Willian in particular, I know Willian was dropped yesterday. These 3 kind of sum up favoritism in this team, because someone like Pepe, again, if he gets dropped for Everton, he can't really complain off the back of yesterday. But you've seen Willian at least be afforded different chances. So what do you make of the favoritism stuff going around and whatnot?
So specifically to do with Willian and Dubai, I think there is reason to be, and there are those within the whole organisation that were surprised that there was no real punishment for that. The indication that came out of his camp was this was a business trip that he needed to do. I mean, the only other people I see taking these necessary business trips to Dubai, the cast of Love Island. They always seem to be there.
And all the rappers and whatnot.
The question. So it was to do with appearances, to do with some endorsement contract in Asia. Did it have to be done? Did it absolutely have to be done? Could it not have been done? Is there no way it could have been done from London? Because it's, if nothing else, like, man, there's a pandemic going on. It's really not very helpful for you to go and get on a plane, fly to another country, take a risk. That, I think there's real cause to be frustrated with the fact that Arteta did not deal with that in any noticeable way.
Facts.
So the talk of favouritism is an inevitable function of the results right now and the size of the squad.
Because of course.
It will feel like favouritism if you are one of those players that is not playing frequently and sees other players play frequently when the whole team isn't playing well. Does Arteta have players that he leans on more heavily? Definitely. I don't really believe he has favourites, because we've seen Willian get dropped.
We've seen Luiz be dropped randomly as well. And Xhaka.
Xhaka has been dropped, and he's a challenging one because he's not good enough. But without Thomas Partey, he's still probably Arsenal's best midfielder. That's that says everything. I mean, and he shoots himself in the foot once a season,
once every 5 games.
So this guy should never play for Arsenal again, but he's still probably their best midfielder. Bellerin, he is in theory the best fullback at Arsenal, but it feels like favouritism if you're not playing, and these players are playing well, but aren't playing well and are getting picked. That's what I would say. And if Arteta's kind of made a really clear stance of, I am not going to, I'm not going to have favourites. This is about culture. It's about performance. And if you play well, you will be rewarded. And if you don't, you will not. Everything has to be perfect. And that Willian thing was probably the one clear imperfection. But then Willian did get dropped for the Leeds game, wasn't it? And then he came back. They got suspended. And that's the thing, when you have injuries, when you have suspensions, it becomes harder to drop all these players. And Maitland-Niles, well, he actually needs to fill in midfield in the Europa League because
of this very reason.
And because there's only 3 midfielders in the squad otherwise, or 3 or 4. So it all feels like favouritism because everything's rubbish. I've spoken to a lot of people, a lot more than I normally would, because thanks to CBS, as opposed to previous employers, I have the time to do this. A lot of people close to senior players at Arsenal and young players at Arsenal and players in the squad, and the players that that really count back Arteta, they're supportive of Arteta. They're not happy with the way things are going. They would really, but I don't think they blame themselves. You've seen what Kieran Tierney said after Burnley. You've seen what Bernd Leno said. I don't know if people have really reported on those Southampton quotes enough, but they're remarkable. He basically came out and said, that there are some of my own teammates are scared.
And I think that's true. I think he's fact. He's important to say that. I actually feel it's a breath of fresh air seeing players speak like that rather than giving us the generic chat. Personally, I
completely agree. And look, they want to turn this around for Arteta. And it's the same is true above. Everyone wants this to go for Arteta. They will keep persevering with Arteta. And I know everyone hears this. We were being told that Arsenal were completely behind Unai Emery, and then 1 minute they weren't. I can only say it feels different with Arteta. If the squad was much more behind him.
That's what I feel. Yeah.
The squad were not behind Unai Emery. They were not. I was really hoping there was going to be either a winner or a late equaliser in this game, because I'm sure you remember a year ago, this was Unai Emery's last Premier League game.
Yeah.
Lacazette equalises Southampton in the 90th, and no one celebrated.
Yeah, we were angry. It looked like we were beginning of the end sort of thing.
Like,
and then,
what have I done? Is he going to be around for another 6 months because of what I've just done?
Literally.
That's not the case anymore. Like, this Arsenal team wants to win for their manager. It may not keep him in the job because, look, the way the form is and the way the table is, it's really, really unlikely. But there is a theoretical circumstance where you get to the stage where it's too much of a risk to employ Arteta because you might get relegated. I hate to say it, and it's so unlikely. And look, Arsenal's view of this is you can't be sure that Arteta's an elite coach. But if you think it's a 50-50 chance, that's probably a better chance than you sack him and you get a guaranteed elite coach, because there's no one queuing up for this job right now.
There's not. And you said it there. It's like, it's a thing where, again, I think one luxury for Arteta and which goes against us getting a more experience, man. I think when they hear Arsenal's job is available, they will listen. They'll want to come. But when you get down to the nuts and bolts, the job is massive, and I think any manager will relish a task. But it's it's the resources, it's all the politics, it's all the consistent changes. It's not enough for someone who doesn't love the club, or someone like Arteta that doesn't have a point to prove. And I think from a selfish point of view, whether this is a success or a failure, the only winner is Arteta. If he succeeds at Arsenal, we've got a good coach. If he doesn't, we do what we've normally done. But he's jumped 2 feet in the deep end. What other new managers have done this? This is going to make him a great coach, and that's where I'm looking at the people above him, because I was saying it last year. I said he's showing he's a good coach, but he will make mistakes. There's things he doesn't know, and I just don't think he's showing enough self-awareness to nip it in the bud. And I don't think the club are helping him. Like, I look at it, I get it. I'm not like everyone saying just play all the Hale End kids. I would love it, but like you said, fans would cry for them to play and then get onto them when it's not going right. But I look at it, and I hear him when he goes for the more experienced names. But it's just the most experienced players in this team are letting you down. You're hearing rumours of a bust up with David Luiz. You're seeing what Xhaka did against Spurs and obviously against Burnley. Willian isn't putting in a performance. These are players that have been there, done that. These are players that some of them ain't played Champions League football since they've come here. There should be a sense of urgency, not to make this the Willian show. But I see Willian, and he kind of sums up what my football club reflects, is that you don't get the vibe that football is what you want to do. You're here for a payday. You're here to just enjoy yourself. You know, you've, like you said, he's went on a business trip. We see his new Puma boots, so there's an endorsement deal. He wanted to stay in London. We know he's got a restaurant. Just to play devil's advocate, it just doesn't look good. And this is why I would like to see the young players or people like Cedric, or why I don't, even though the last 2 games El Nene hasn't been good, but why I didn't mind El Nene playing, because these players are playing with points to prove, sort of thing. And I just feel the most experienced players are letting him down. And it's another thing, when I don't see a system, I don't really see what we're doing with the young players. I don't really see what we're doing with the experienced players. It looks like we're doing, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It is very tough to kind of figure out what we're doing as a football club, really.
Yes. I can't really add much to that at all.
Crazy, man.
And I completely agree about Willian. It's been a disaster. He's not, and all I would hope is that deal is so bad and hopefully gets remedied quite quickly, but that it remains at this level of bad, and it convinces certain people within the club that they need to be casting their pool beyond the clients of certain agents.
Facts.
Now,
Fact.
There are still footballing reasons to sign Willian aside from his agent. And I am not saying he was signed because of his agent.
Of course not.
But
it just don't look good.
I mean, we go back to the finances as well. He was a free transfer. That meant he's on good wages, but that meant that the money could go elsewhere. Because anyone you sign that you want to be that, an Arsenal starter is going to be on good wages.
Going to be on big money, yeah.
But look, it's so far from acceptable, his level of performance, and it frustrates me that Arteta continues to turn to him, even ahead of not just Reece Nelson, Emile Smith-Rowe, players even younger than that if need be, players playing out of position. I'd rather see Hector Bellerin playing at a right wing.
I'd rather force Balogun right wing than Willian and what I'm seeing right now, personally.
Yeah, right. Exactly. 100%. And that for me is, I don't want to make Willian a scapegoat.
No, of course not. But we have to.
But ultimately, he embodies a lot of the problems in this squad right now, from what I'm seeing. And I don't know Willian. I don't know his people. I've never spoken to the guy. Possibly, maybe I did when he was at Chelsea, but certainly not since he's been at Arsenal. I'd love it if he was a success. I think we all forget that Arsenal fans would love it if he was. It would have been brilliant if
that's the best for us.
Yeah, and it'd be even better the fact that he used to play for Chelsea. But
yeah,
it's that deal has spoiled a lot of things, and they're basically now going to have to go into the market to sign the player they thought Willian might be.
And that's the thing with me. I don't mind. I didn't mind Willian. Like, Willian's not my cup of tea, but like you said, you could see logic behind it. Experience, squad player, pressure on spots. Personally, I would have liked us to sign a better winger, because I feel with Pepe, with the Nelsons, I think we got to a thing where Wenger normally said, like, if I can't sign a super player in that role, there's no point signing mediocre players. I would have liked that. David Luiz, I actually feel was so against David Luiz signing for this club. And I feel some of what I was saying has been proved right, because he still is hot and cold. But I actually think he's been a better signing. But ultimately, David Luiz is David Luiz. You're not going to change him. Willian is Willian. Mkhitaryan was a free. It proved to be expensive. I just feel sometimes when you take shortcuts, Kolasinac as well, when you take shortcuts, it costs in the long run, and you have to buy twice and 3 times over, like we just said with the centre halves and whatnot. And that leads me on to my next question. It's like, it's difficult for me as a fan to sit here and kind of decipher whether Edu or Vinay have done good or bad jobs. But what's your feelings around them? Can they do a bit more? Have they done enough? Because Edu looks a cut figure. Edu looks like yesterday he looks a cut figure. He might not be an Arsenal legend, but he's been here when values have been quite positive. For me, like Arteta, my biggest pet peeve is that they're both central midfielders, and that's an area we know we needed. So I can't understand, any logic in you lot thinking the current options are good enough. So what's your feelings around those?
I think we forget that Edu has had 2 transfer windows. He arrived so late in the day in the final Emery summer. He played a role in bringing Luis in, and I don't really want to. You've kind of hit the nail on the head on that.
Yeah, we don't need to go over Luiz again.
So he's had 2 windows. It's not a year to judge a technical director seems insufficient.
Quite unfair, really.
He's now he's now really doing a different job to the one he was hired for. This is so often the case with Arsenal. You know, he was hired to link the whole club to be the sort of the man that leads the scouting process, but doesn't sign the players, doesn't make the telephone calls. That's what Raul was there for. He now does Raul's job as well as his own, and Arteta does a bit of it. Vinay, I really, really admire Vinay. I think he is a good leader for Arsenal. He is also a rookie chief executive at 39. And I think that's the challenge with all this, is you have three people who between them have pretty much no experience of running a
really
English football club. They're not going to replace Raul. They should. They need. The problem is that Raul was kind of didn't really do the job that Arsenal would have wanted. Raul doesn't know players. You know, you would talk to him and bring a player, and just go, who? But what he knows is he knows people. And obviously, Edu has his contacts, and Vinay will have developed contacts over his time, you know, on the commercial side. But none of them quite know how the game works.
Yeah,
like Raul did. Raul might not have played the game right for Arsenal. Obviously, there's mistakes he made, and so he might not have been the right person to do that job. But someone needs to do that job, and I think right now my worry is that a lot of it goes back to what you've said a few times. I completely agree with this. There are a lot of people here doing things they don't know that they don't know how to do. Exactly like you've been saying. That Mikel Arteta, he's great. He's a great culture guy, and clearly that matters. But does he know what he shouldn't be doing and what he should be doing? Do Edu and Vinay know what he shouldn't be doing and where his focus should be right now? No, because none of them have ever run a football club before.
And that's the scary thing.
You need someone that's been at that level. Can't think of anyone off the top, because ideally you want someone that knows Arsenal as well. I mean, actually, I can think of one person off the top of my head. His name's Arsene Wenger.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say it.
I don't think it would be the right thing. I don't think it would help anyone to have.
He's too emotionally attached to the club. Yeah. I know we need someone that loves the club, but he's too emotionally attached. And my biggest pet peeve with Wenger, as much as I loved him, I feel within the last 3 years in particular, I don't necessarily, not that he wasn't doing things with a clean heart, but I just feel the lines got blurred in relation to what is the right decision for Arsenal and Arsene. And I look at, I'm pretty sure there was a time El Nene, Giroud and Coquelin were all handed new deals, and I was looking at it, it's like, this isn't what we should be doing, sort of thing. It's like that is what Arsenal wants to do, not what is the best for Arsenal.
Yes,
and that's what's been a problem of ours.
Yeah, no, completely. I interviewed him last month or the month before, and I think one of the struggles he's having is separating himself and Arsenal from the period he was manager. He has almost come to view himself as Arsenal.
Yeah.
Which is natural, because if nothing else, the guy's just spent years writing an autobiography. Imagine that gives you quite a big head and makes you were the most important person in the room at every time. They need someone like that. They need someone that just knows how the game works. And I think that might solve more of their problems than we think. Maybe even someone that the challenge is they shouldn't be on the same level as Vinay, but maybe they should be reporting into Vinay, who can still focus more on the finances, and they just make the football side tick. They're the person that represents Arsenal at the Premier League meetings, at the ECA. They're just someone with a bit of experience in the corridors of power, someone that will know when there's a good deal to be done.
Yeah, a bit of proactiveness, because I feel for everything Arsenal is extremely reactive on the field, off the field. We're just reactive, even down to Saliba. We're reactive. We're not proactively trying to find him a temporary home. We're not, if we're reacting to not being able to sign Arawa. God knows if we didn't sign Partey, where I would have, and I'm not naive, it probably is. I would have loved there to have been, if you can't get Arawa or Partey, can you get the same profile or less of a player? It's that proactiveness. And it brings me to my last question for you. Make sure you're hitting the like button, people. Do you think we can do any business in January? Do you have any hope?
Yes.
I'm loving the nodding. So yeah, this is exciting.
Like, I really have to star this. The desire is, and Edu has spoken about this, and I reported this on Monday. The desire is to get that creative midfielder in January. Don't know if it'll happen. No idea. Don't even know who it is anymore because
Charles like myth.
yeah, it was a while. It's been a while since they really thought they could get him. I think midway through last season, they were trying to before COVID, they were trying to set the groundwork, possibly have some conversations. They'd been really keen before they sacked Emery, and I think then there's so much things. It seems silly. We all experience football through a world where transfers are the most important thing, and of course recruitment's vital. But there's just other stuff to do, other needs that needed to be prioritised, and even if they'd kind of put up a good fight, you're fighting RB Leipzig for RB Salzburg player. It's going to be hard. And they'll keep tracking him. It obviously won't happen in January and probably won't happen in the summer, but he's a player they really like. They will look to get that creative midfielder. You and I know they have to trim back this squad in January, or else, I mean, you're going to have to, I mean, if nothing else, you need to find another space in the squad for a creative midfielder.
Literally.
And that maybe means that, the people we know are available. Ozil is available. Socrates is available. Mustafi's available. Kolasinac's available. Possibly even Lacazette. Possible. I think they'd have to look to replace him. So you might have to. That might be one for the summer, but I don't know that.
Sorry to cut you off. Do you feel it's quite damning? Before I forget, and I'll let you carry on. Do you think it's quite damning that Lacazette? There's been no talk of a new deal, despite he's contracted until 2022.
Yeah, I think it tells you everything. I think they kind of were hoping this would be a year where, by this stage of the season, he'd have put together such a convincing case. He'd play for his new contract. He'd go, you'd almost rather have the crisis of Lacazette's contract's expiring and he's playing great. What do we do? Than, what it is now where it's like, oh God, do we really want to sign him to a new deal? Probably not, because at least that way he'd be performing for you. And if you lose Lacazette in the summer, or even if you lose him on a free in 18 months' time, I mean, you've got good service out of him. It's worse. The way things are now is almost worse. Where you don't want to sign him to a new contract. No one's going to want to pay big money for him. All those things are the case, and this is the kind of worst of all scenarios. But yeah, they're going to look for a creative midfielder in January. I don't want to kind of guarantee that will happen. It could even be a short-term fix. There's been talk about. They've been offered Eriksen. I don't know if they take him, and I don't know how much it matters to Eriksen to, his past with Tottenham. But that was one they were offered. I don't know what will happen there. They would like to get a creative midfielder. We'll need to trim the squad back, but there's a desire to do something in January, certainly. Again, it's going back to exactly what you were saying. You would hope that they are smart enough to know that you could sign a short-term fix, but only till the end of the season. If you get Eriksen, say, on loan, that's all right. If you're not committed to him long term, then you can then go and just sign the player you really want in the summer. But I think they are, from what I've heard, they're conscious that they kind of trying to get the right one rather than just get anyone. So yeah, reason to hope. I don't want to put a percentage on anything, but they're looking for a creator in January.
I hope they are, because for me, the minute it became clear that you wasn't going to buy that creative number 8 or an out-and-out 10 in the summer, the groundwork should have been put into January or the summer. Now, I'm going to be very critical of the club in the summer, because all the language we hear is, we're well ahead of our planning for summer 2021, but I'll leave that when it's here. I know I said I was going to ask you only one more question, but it's just a personal one now. There was a fan forum of some such with Vinay and Edu and whatnot. I was seeing you tweet about it. I wanted to just press you on that. And is there any takeaways? What key messages did you take away as an Arsenal man?
So I've only heard this secondhand because, hey, I'm not in the forum. I'm a journalist. But obviously, part of my job, therefore, is to find out within a few minutes what's said at these fan forums. There was a lot, from the people I've spoken to, there was a lot more optimism and positive energy in the room than those people thought would be the case. They've also been in these fan forums a year ago, and there's slightly more belief that this is, as Arteta put it, a blip. Everyone likes working with each other, and those are little things that feel irrelevant, and sometimes they can be irrelevant, but it is true. It is important. They all value each other. They respect each other. I'm not saying they didn't before, but there's a real good relationship with these people. Everyone wants the other person to make this a success, and that might not be enough, but yeah, that's what I'd say. There is a desire, a hope that this group can turn it around.
I really hope that's true, and I really hope that's true. I really hope we can get a win starting on Saturday, or I'm not too sure. Yeah, it's going to be hard. I mean, I'm not too sure if Arteta's going to be able to make it to the end of the year if this continues, because ultimately, whether I think it's right or wrong, personally, I'd rather sack the majority of these players and get rid of people above than Arteta. But ultimately, he's the fall guy. And I saw something today. He's got one bit of hope is he's got an identical record as Herbert Chapman. So let's just hope that, you know, we can get something out of that. It's not where you start, it's where you finish, sort of thing. I've really appreciated having you, James, and I know I've probably taken you over with an hour or so. Sorry for doing that, but I've really loved having you here, man. I appreciate that. Thank you. My pleasure. I really enjoy your channel. You do some amazing work getting some of the top young talent to come and talk with you. And I mean, I'll say it as well, smash the like button and hit the like button. I mean, the most interesting thing I found out today is that you're a Burner Boy fan. So yeah, man, that's great. Bro. Oh man, take care, keep safe, and we'll hopefully do this again one day. I'd love to. Thanks, man. Thanks for your time, James. Cheers. Bye.